In the modern day and age, wealthy people, and I mean wealthy to the point when the money is not a question anymore, would probably opt for a roomy Gulfstream, Citation, or maybe a smaller Vision jet if one had a license. Back in the 1950s, the plane of status could probably be a Learjet or classic V-tailed Bonanza, but what if we wind the clock back even more? Ladies and gentlemen, we are glad to welcome you at Big Metal Birds, and today we review a true plane of class, Beechcraft Staggerwing. There aren't many planes that will make even a seasoned pilot turn his head and say, "Wow," but this plane definitely will. Staggerwing's philosophy was to be a status symbol, indicating the wealth and power of its owner. But did it succeed? Let's find out in this video. Walter Herschel Beech, a genius aviation engineer and entrepreneur, a man behind the timeless classics like Bonanza and Baron, brilliant planes that, by the way, we have videos about on our channel, embarked on quite a risky journey, creating a fast, comfortable, and elegant aircraft for wealthy businessmen right in the middle of Great Depression. But why did he choose this path? The Great Depression, just like any other economic and geopolitical crisis, counterintuitively is a time of opportunities for a selected number of fields and persons who rule in these fields. Despite the abnormal inflation rates, falling prices, tax revenues, and profits, there was still a sector of bankers and brokers who, let's face it, sometimes not so legally, were able to not only keep their income up, but sometimes even multiply. For Beech, these wealthy businessmen were the only target audience in order to evade bankruptcy. The original Model 17 was designed by Ted Wells, an airplane designer that Beech took from Curtiss Wright Aircraft Manufacturing. In fact, Wells designed it a few years back, but it was rejected by the board. But Beech saw the opportunity, and the first Model 17 made its maiden flight on November 4th of 1932. It was marketed as an executive aircraft for people who value their time much more than $14,000. That was the Model 17 price at that time. Just to put that in perspective, if we take the average inflation rate, it would be around $250,000 US today. And no surprise, there weren't a lot of people willing to pay this much in such turbulent times. In its first production year, Beech sold only 18 Model 70s. Well, you know, those rich old men love to brag about their purchases. Thanks to that, Model 17 quickly became a status symbol, and in the next 5 years, Beech sold around 400 of them. But how exactly did it become so popular? We usually start our spec block with the fuselage, but this time, it's worth starting with the interior, as it is truly luxurious. Each Staggerwing was custom built by hand, with leather and mohair cabin upholstery, red oak yoke, and extra comfy seats. It had exactly what its potential buyers and pilots were looking for, the premium and exclusive feel. But remember, these people's most valuable asset was their time. And talking about speed, this plane delivered. Let's see how. By 1934, Beechcraft had designed and built 4 models. The only difference they had was the engine. Beech took Curtiss Wright engines of different power, 420, 690, and 710 horsepower. But one last model, B-17L, was powered by just a 225 horsepower Jacobs engine. But on the other hand, it was the only model to feature a retractable gear, quite an uncommon feature of that time. B-17L proved best suited to meet the market demands of that time and became the first production model. Beech then experimented with different engines throughout the years, but one model gained particular popularity, produced 67 times for civilian needs and 412 times for military needs as an executive transportation aircraft. It was the Model D-17S from 1937. The 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney radial called Wasp Jr. was a perfect fit for D-17S, both in terms of its weight and the power it delivered. It was a large 9-cylinder engine with 985 cubic inches of displacement. This engine allowed Staggerwing to cruise at around 170 knots, with never exceed at 185 knots. It was pretty fast for the plane of that time. One of the main competitors of Model 17 was the Waco Custom Cabin Series biplanes, but their speed usually didn't exceed 140 knots due to the smaller engines. Besides the engine, Staggerwing had quite a few features that would later make it an aviation legend. So let's take a closer look. As I already mentioned, Staggerwings were all made by hand, and complex construction made the manufacturing even slower. The fabric-covered fuselage was fared with wood formers and stringers over a welded steel tube frame. Model D-17 was longer than the initial version and had the ailerons relocated to the upper wings, eliminating interference with the flaps. But let's talk about the main piece of the plane, its wing. Let's start with the fact that Beech was much more an entrepreneur than an inventor. The stagger-winged aircraft were built before, both with positive stagger when the upper wing is positioned forward of the lower, like in Stearman, or negative, as in Sopwith Dolphin from 1918. But Beech combined all the benefits of the staggered biplane, but made it civilian because, apparently, all the previous biplanes were strictly military reconnaissance or fighter planes. Speaking about benefits, negative stagger greatly increased visibility, had superior lift, and made possible to carry 3 times more fuel when compared to monoplanes of that time. There also was a study about the stall prevention features of the negative stagger, because the lower wing stalls first, and, since it's in a forward position, lowers the nose of the airplane before the upper wing has a chance to stall. While the stall-preventing characteristics weren't officially tested, 6 fuel tanks were a significant selling point, besides all the rich status fuss. There were 2 on each wing, and also 1 forward and 1 rear fuselage tank, with a total capacity of 179 gallons. Providing for up to a 1,300-mile range, while Wasp burns 22 gallons per hour at 60% power. This beautiful bird ended its production run in 1948, mainly because of the technological and design advancements of the lightweight V-tail Bonanza. While it was later claimed to be particularly dangerous to fly, we made a video about it in case you want to know the true story of this brilliant plane. In the late 1940s, Staggerwing had too much of the pre-war design, but society wanted something much different that wouldn't associate with these dark times. Beechcraft delivered the 785th Staggerwing in 1949. Luckily, there are a few Staggerwings that fly today, being true legends of the skies. In case you are interested, I found just one D-17S on trade, aplane.com. And this freshly restored piece of history costs a whooping $500,000. Isn't it amazing how this airplane was a status symbol 90 years ago, and it still remains to be even today? Thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to like it if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from above the clouds.